So of course, if you're not aware of all of the consequences, your acts will be judged differently than once you do know. It does not exhume yourself completely from the consequences themselves. In many cases, even though we may say that we don't know that it's right or wrong, we almost internally have that feeling. Right? We do it with a broken heart. Right? We do it with a lot of suffering on a decision. Because deep down, we know that it's not up to us to make that kind of decision. But given where we are, given our beliefs, our knowledge, our feelings, they can overwhelm us much more. And our desire to bring comfort to a loving person is going to be more predominant than not. Even Spiritists could find themselves in that position. So, just as we are not here to try to know better than God, we're not here to judge anyone who makes those decisions. Right? Because the consequences, all of the implications are much bigger than what we know. We basically know very little. But we do need to think that there is a reason why we go through things. It's a faith. We have to have that faith that there is a purpose to the good things and the bad things that happen to us. And that faith will drive us. And again, we're not saying do not bring comfort to those who are suffering. Bring as much comfort as you possibly can. So is it wrong to put someone who's in pain under pain medication? No, it's not. It's okay. We don't have to let them suffer unnecessarily. Kind of putting a attenuation on the physical consequences of the suffering. Because the hardest one are the moral suffering that we have to go through. And sometimes to have the body in this weakened state gives the opportunity for the spirit to go inside and think through what it's really making it suffer. Mm-hmm. So we can't judge, and that's why we're not here to create a movement to let's abolish Bill C-41. Right? We can definitely take on, any spiritist has the right to take on their political views and make their position and say we're against Bill C-41, but we shall never condemn or judge someone who decides to take what is lawful and execute their right.
I also just wanted to touch base on what you're saying, because a lot of people, when they get excited about the idea of Spiritism and all the knowledge that is available for us to read, somehow end up instilling fear, which really is not what Spiritism is all about. It's not about instilling fears. If you read the really strong book, Memoirs of a Suicide, don't give that book as a starting point to anyone on Spiritism, because it's really a tough book. There's a lot of heavy material in there.
Especially if you don't get to the end of the book.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's this thick.
So it's not to instill fear, but rather to educate and enlighten and show the consequences. And on a personal note, my father had terminal cancer of the lung that spread to the brain, and he was in that situation for 5 months. And I remember often talking to him about the fact that he was under treatment. It wasn't chemotherapy and it wasn't radiation, but it was a more profound treatment. And so I think that our role is really to bring comfort in ways that encourage us. And dying with dignity truly means letting them know that they're being victorious to go through what they're going through, that it's not all in vain, that they're able to overcome that there is something greater that is awaiting for them. And I remember in my father's moments of despair that when we talked to him like that, he would stop crying, and his eyes would shine a new light, and he would fall asleep. So that's what we do. That's what we do. Because even if a person doesn't have that belief or the knowledge, the idea that that could be true truly is hopeful. And it's an anchor. And it's something that they can hold on to. So I just wanted to bring that there, because the consequences that we're talking about is, again, not to instill fear and say it's prohibited and you're going to burn in the umbral forever, right? The lower zones. But that there could be something greater waiting for you. Just hang on a little bit more. Just hang on. And they hold on to that. So it's really beautiful what we can do with the promised comforter or consoler as we have with Spiritism.
More questions? If you don't ask them, I'm going to make you ask.
Don't please ask questions.
We have one question over there.
About the recent bill passed on
Yes.
euthanasia here in Canada, applies to people being able to make medical dying decisions or dying choices for the age of 18 and above. The bill also enables the parents, who of course would be over the age of 18, to make dying choices for their children, like
No.
for life support, for
No.
example.
No, not at this point. They had a long debate about that, and a lot of people, especially what they call the mature children. So there's a lot of discussion between the 15 or 16 to 18 years old, because the legal age here is 18. But what if you're 17 or 16? This is what called the mature children, and the discussion, right? The way that they left it is eventually this could be opened up later, but because this is a first time that this type of option is being made available, that the politicians thought it would be best to start only with the adults, because it has to be your written consent and not somebody else's. Even if you're over 18 and you can't make a decision, you cannot have another person in your behalf write that permission. It has to be the individual. And someone who's under 18 does not have the legal power to do that.
Right, and even the parents cannot make that.
They cannot, you cannot, no one can do that in behalf of another person, which is, it's not as bad as it could have been.
But you just want to know, it's different when you're on a life support because you suffered an accident and
Yeah.
there's nothing else to do. Then yes, your POA, which could be your parents, which are power of attorney, can make the decision to say that's
To turn off
Yeah.
medication,
But
not to
that's
kill.
But that's not euthanasia. That's
It's different.
That's a different
Yeah.
thing, right? Then you can have someone that can say, yeah, let's disconnect to the machines. There's nothing else to do
Even
there.
if there is no brain like death, because I mean, if there is
Yeah, and then you just let it natural.
You have to
go,
let
but
it
that's not
naturally-
euthanasia. You're not doing something to kill them. You're just withdrawing care and let things take naturally. Then anybody can, but that's not a terminal illness that this person had it, right?
That's the orthotonasia.
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
practice.
That's
because
orthotonasia,
essentially it's the machine that's keeping
That's
the
correct.
Yeah.
So turning off the machine would
And there's many cases when the machines are turned off and the person does not die right away.
Yes.
They can survive for weeks.
Or patients who stay in coma for years after it's disconnected. Yeah.
Sandra was saying
Sandra.
something.
Yeah, so if the person can't write the request,
They
so
can't do
they
it.
can't do it. So he needs to be able
Well, he
to
has to sign. He has to be able to sign it. Somebody can write it and they can sign it, but they have to sign the authorization
But
themselves.
they have to be consciously
They have to be mental,
aware and mentally capable.
They have to
of
understand
asking.
what
Okay.
the consequences are and that
Okay.
they have been advised of all of the options they have.
Okay.
That does not exclude people which could have mental issues. So a deeply depressed person, right, could ask to be killed.
Question?
Yeah, I'm finding, first of all, very interesting that in many ways that topic brings a lot of social issues in that level, but somehow I keep bringing this to myself that from the Spiritist point of view, so many Spiritist centers, many messages that many times we receive spiritually are talking about life and are talking about the value of life. In a time in our life, like not only here or in Brazil, in many parts of the world, where those debates are very much in a stoked up, like in United Nations trying to regulate the abortion as a medical strategy to minimize the illegal procedures that are killing more than the procedures that can be done in a kind of safe way. But at the same time, we understand from the point of view of the Spiritism about the value of life and all those decisions. How can they compromise our growth as spirits? One more point that I'm going to throw. Today we talk about the transformation of the planet, the transformation of us as spirits. What would be then the connection to everything is on the table now, so much talking about life, and at the same time the earth faces those decisions about legalizing, leaving that freely to the hands of the people to make that decision? Does it seem like a part of a process that is necessary for us to go through? So more and more this is coming to our hands. We understand that each one according to their deeds. But we talk about society, we talk about laws, we talk about...
Sorry, I'm not understanding your question very well.
My
Can you
question
rephrase that?
would that be part of a educational process for us to be given that opportunity to make the choices more and more?
The laws, man's laws will change, right? As we evolve, those laws will change. If you look back in history, things that were considered legal and humane today are like, what were we thinking?
Slavery,
right?
for example,
Yeah.
was legal.
Is it a part of a learning process? Definitely. I truly believe that everything that happens is part of a learning process. But it still will not miss the consequences for the soul. The book Action and Reaction talks about how some mothers, they choose abortion because they feel the dense vibration and energy of the reincarnating spirit, often an enemy from the past. So subconsciously they feel it. It's not that they know about it. Once again, what is society doing to educate, to lessen, right? The numbers of deaths and everything else. Now, if the laws are there and are legalizing, like you just said, would it be part of the transition of the planet, right? Is that what you're asking? Is it something that is going to be useful for us as we evolve and as we progress? There's always usefulness behind every action, but I also go in accordance with, some of the people that are more evolved than we are and more knowledgeable in Spiritism, that nothing evil lasts forever. And there will be a time in the shift of ideas and when the future generation that are coming imbued with this idea of morality and ethical for living, that are going to change these laws that today we consider to be correct and ethical.
And it's also a wonderful opportunity, seems, right, for us to take responsibility for our own actions and our own laws. Because now, in this point of history, we have democracy, which we haven't always had. So we had folks making laws for us. And now, as a society, we're learning to come together and talk to each other to figure out what is it that we want to do as a whole. Now, the solution might not always be the one we want, but it tends to be the solution of the majority, which is already progress in itself, comparatively speaking. Mm-hmm. But there will be change, right? And this is a great segue to a question that I kind of heard, but not really, and I want to float up to you. So we're obviously talking here about the sanctity of life and how great and important life is. And we're talking obviously about dying, death and dying, which is really hard. Something that we necessarily haven't touched about, and it's really hard, is our refusal to die. We see in our society today that we do more plastic surgeries, we do more treatments to live forever, we don't want to die, and sometimes we are doing that to an extreme. Mm-hmm. How do we find the balance? Because Joe was talking about dying with dignity, right? So where do we find the balance of not longer dying and dying with dignity? What does it look like? And see how it's always a balancing act, as you can tell here, right? We're just demonstrating the balancing act of Spiritism.
Well, then I think that let's put a little bit some of the things in context. The examples you gave is there's only one greater fear of dying to the modern human being, which is the fear of aging.
Mhm.
The two things are not the same. So many of us, because we eventually think that we will die after we age,
We don't want to age.
we don't want to age.
Or aging is a sign that we're nearing death.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we
So-
don't want to entertain the idea
No.
of death. We just put it aside,
Right.
right?
Right. So there's a couple. There's always multiple sides. So from one side is vanity, superficialism, and so forth. But on the other side, we see the importance of having a good perceptions of oneself, to reinforce your personal ego, to
Mhm.
make you feel better,
Mhm.
to make you feel with more will to live.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you're kind of fooling yourself that you're not aging just because you don't see white hair,
Mm-hmm.
you're still
Or hair.
aging.
Or hair at all.
Or hair. You're still aging. But if that kind of trick keeps you more motivated, keeps you more eager to experience life, it's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
We also know that Spiritism is the first to say that science will continue to evolve, and Spiritism will evolve with science. So we've seen a progressive increase of life expectancy, and we're getting to the point where we will be normal for people to be 100, 110, 120 years old, right? Which changes very much the dynamic of how we're going to get quality of life. This is all going to be new learnings for us. It's very exciting as a humanity to think of that, even though we still have people who live in conditions that will make likely them die 30 years younger or 40 years younger than those in other civilizations. But the truth is, back to Thiago's point, the planet is evolving as a whole. Even though some parts seem to be evolving faster, it is bringing up the rest. Maybe not as fast as it could or it should, but it's going to benefit people overall.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally don't feel that that's a tremendous issue. It's just a reflection of who you are. And to the other point that Thiago made, laws do not create abortions. Law did not create euthanasia. It was there all along. It's been there since we've had somebody called a doctor or a abortionist, right? It's always been there. And the shadow was never a good thing. So part of our process of evolution is taking evil from the shadow, putting it into the light, and then figuring out, as you said, what can we do to avoid the causes in the first place, rather than trying to prohibit the consequences.
Great. So as we are reaching our end, I think you might be suitable and suiting for us to reflect on what is it that we can do as individuals, or we can do as Spiritists in groups, to help all of us, including ourselves first, reflect on death and, more importantly, the value of life. So maybe each one of you can give us a little quick closing words on the value of life, and what is it that we as human beings, as we leave here today, can take with us about life. Marcelo, do you want to go first? No? It's okay. Free will here. You don't have to.
Deep breath.
I think Spiritism brings a lot to us. I remember I got to know Spiritism 20 years ago when I first arrived in U.S. Before that, I was Catholic. My background was Catholic, but still, like many questions, I was always been a questioning soul, and when I reached Spiritism, it was not through pain, not through suffering, but was something equivalent to suffering, because when we don't have an answer for our questions, it becomes a sort of a pain.
Mhm.
Like, I need to know what is the reason of life, where I came from, and all these things that we have, and feelings, why suffer, why people suffer or not. And that's why Spiritism brings a meaning of life to me, a more profound meaning of life. And of course, none of us here, except there's like someone very anonymous here, are saints. And we have moments of anxiety, we have moments of like anguish, we have moments of sadness, but we have hope to see one day, to see within us a human being more plain, with more plenitude, with more serenity, and we will see this beauty of life through the eyes of Spiritism that teaches like to educate yourself, get to know Spiritism, why you suffer, why this, why that, and try to do this process of loving one another. Oh, this is Kardec's words, I'm not just paraphrasing him, and it makes a tremendous difference in my life, because when we are, even though we suffer, we feel all these anguishes and anxieties and pains and whatever situation we might be inserted, but we see this will pass. Blessed are the afflicted, for they shall be consoled. And when you hold on and you believe this, not because it's something that we believe because we have to believe, but it's something that we believe because it makes sense. There's a logical explanation behind this. Okay, this will pass. And I'm going to hold on. And everything is going to be all right. That's some music, yeah? All right.
Andrea, how about you?
Well, it just came to mind. There's a beautiful message from the book Our Daily Bread, in which Emmanuel talks about how we have within us, within our reach, the gospel, the teachings. And he goes on to say, we can translate the gospel into every language, for every nation, for every culture. But unless we're able to internalize that and make it a living message, then we are not going to reach the objective. And I like the message because it's not talking about reaching the objective to convert anybody, but rather to show them where is it that you get your faith. When you have a family member that is going through an illness and you're not desperate, crying, falling into depression, where do you get your strength to go through life's trials and hardships? And I think that in the times that we're living right now, where there is so much suffering, so much turmoil, one of the things that we can do as spiritists or not is look to the side. There are people walking around us, before us, that are suffering a lot. Joanna de Angelis will say the best way to diminish a little bit, to weaken the suffering that we feel, is to help those that are suffering as well. And you find new happiness, a new meaning to life, a new objective. And whatever they may be carrying may be a lesson for us as well. So it's time that we get out of our own little world. Stop thinking that we are the center of it. Karen Armstrong says that. She's the founder of the Charter for Compassion. And she said that compassion is when we dethrone ourselves from the center of the world and put someone else there. Meaning we find who needs us and how we can be of help. And Divaldo Franco more and more lately has been talking about the need for us to pay attention to what society calls the invisible. People that have been forgotten, that have not been acknowledged. And sometimes a simple glaze their way, a simple smile, a simple word of encouragement is all the person needs, and it's one step less that they have to committing suicide. We never know the impact that we may have on someone's life, and helping them achieve the meaning of life depends on how we live ours.
Thank you. And as we reach the end, we're going to call on our resident TSSer. They so special. If you do not know, TSS stands for They So Special.
Or They So Sweet. They So Super.
We found that out this week. But Joe, brings us home. Tell us, as the resident TSSer, what does it mean to bring all of this together in our lives, and at the same time go out with a positive attitude towards life when sometimes we see so many things that from a material perspective are hard to grapple with.
Thank you, Danielle. Like most of life's hard problems, the answer is often very simple. If you want to cherish the gift, love those who gave you the gift, the giver. To cherish life, recognize it as a divine gift, and just love God for it. That will shine down in everything. Will make you love your neighbors. It will make you love yourself, and then life will be worth living.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And and at the risk of speaking on behalf of my good friends here, but I will anyways. And I think they're going to allow me. The three of us who are visiting, we want to thank you for your time and for your patience, for having us here. We feel very honored. We're very happy to be part of your anniversary. It is a fantastic achievement, you coming here every week when you could be doing something else, because you are working on reminding yourself, just like we are in different parts of the country, that we are immortal spirits. So we celebrate your victories. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much for being here.
Stuck on TSS.